Welcome to the Cybersecurity Whisper. It's great to have you back for the week of June 9th. Last week we covered the Snowflake incident, and we wanted to follow up on that first thing. There's been a lot of news about it this week. A spree of attacks certainly, is underway targeting Snowflake's enterprise customers. And if you don't remember, Snowflake is a cloud-based data warehouse company, and they hired CrowdStrike and Mandiant to assist with the ongoing investigation into these attacks. And to date, they've not identified evidence suggesting the activity was caused by a vulnerability or a misconfiguration or a breach of the Snowflake's actual platform. Instead, they said, look, they became aware of potentially unauthorized access to certain customers on May 23rd, and it's observed that activity going back to mid-April. And so Mandiant has begun helping these orgs investigate the compromises of their Snowflake databases. And based on those investigations, they said a threat actor likely obtained access to multiple organizations' Snowflake tenants by using credentials stolen by infostealing malware. And so again, this goes back to that shared responsibility model. When you outsource your data, when you put it in the cloud, when you put it in SaaS, hopefully via the contract that you negotiated and health checks that you're having with that third party, it's very clear what they're securing and what is your responsibility to secure. And when we go to the cloud, when we go to these SaaS and IaaS and PaaS platforms, we often beg for the ability to customize. And with that becomes responsibility as well. So some folks are giving Snowflake a hard time. They didn't force the MFA on all customers. But then again, don't we want that flexibility of being able to turn it on ourselves? And so in this case, the customers that have been breached, are those that didn't have multi-factor enabled. And so it's on them, not Snowflake, really for the breach, because they didn't have that turned on. In addition, this week, Hugging Face, if you're not familiar with Hugging Face, they are a platform for building AI and ML models. They've warned users of a breach that could expose access authentication secrets on Spaces, which is a community repository for AI projects. Earlier this week, their team detected unauthorized access to the Spaces platform, specifically related to Spaces secrets. And as a consequence, they've got suspicions that a subset of Spaces secrets could have been accessed without authorization. And they haven't disclosed if the breach has resulted from a vulnerability in the platform, but they are currently investigating and is really yet to reveal the radius of the impact. So if you've got, if you use this Spaces, you really should be rotating or changing those authentication secrets just to cover yourselves. Continuing the theme of the shared responsibility model, there were issues this week that were talked about in the Microsoft Azure platform related to service tag security problems. And it was discovered by a Tenable researcher. They reported a vulnerability in Microsoft Azure service tags that allow an attacker to bypass firewall rules by forging requests from trusted services. And the vulnerability was discovered initially in the Azure Application Insight Service, but as it continued, the Microsoft Security Research Response Center, MSRC, they eventually found that it affects more than 10 other Azure services. And in each case, attackers would be able to access other internal and private Azure services. And so the report quoted an unnamed Microsoft employee as saying service tags are not sufficient to secure traffic to a customer's origin without considering the nature of the service and the traffic it may send. It's always a best practice to implement authentication and authorization for the traffic rather than just relying on firewall rules alone. Again, giving you that flexibility as the end customer. The fix really, though, is for the security teams to add authentication layers to protect the service tags. And this is where it becomes complex, because in this situation, some said Microsoft should add the authentication natively before the service is even enabled, or should the customers and the security teams add their own authentication so they can decide how much friction they can afford to impose on their third parties or end users. Now, moving to artificial intelligence, this week Sync, it is SNYK, they released a survey that said orgs are deploying AI coding technology without enough protocols to ensure safe and secure use. They said while 1/3 of IT decision makers believe it's critical to quickly adopt AI coding tools, those working directly with the solutions certainly have security concerns, and nearly 3 in 5 C-suite tech decision makers cited security fears associated with AI coding tools. But the AppSec teams and the developers were 3 times more likely to rate AI-generated code as bad. So only 1 in 5 companies actually run proofs of concept do a POC prior to introducing AI coding options. And more than half of the orgs didn't provide developers with tool-related training about how to do that. And so, there's the challenge there of just wanting to run fast, wanting to get ahead of the competitors, and balancing the company's risk appetite. It's a constant battle there, and being educated and giving the tools and the training needed. Continuing with AI, there were more surveys done this week talking about unauthorized AI is really again exposing companies' data thanks to our employees. And I can't imagine it's ever, no, not ever, that it's rarely done with malicious intent. It's employees wanting to actually be more productive, and so maybe they're uploading a spreadsheet of all the employees names and salaries to get an average of different department salaries, or maybe they're uploading contracts because they want to see how many contracts have an early out clause, or different things. But at the same time, if they're using their free account, so if they're logging into ChatGPT or Bard or any of these others, Gemini, and they're using their free personal account, well, when you agree to that, you're allowing that tool to use anything you upload to train their model. Versus if your company has signed a corporate agreement and is paying to use ChatGPT Enterprise or the enterprise version of these tools, typically they can't use it to train their models. So according to this survey, 74% of the ChatGPT use at work is through non-corporate accounts. And that was just going back to the second quarter, which is huge. And that's very easy to detect. Again, you have to log into these AI tools. Are you using a personal account or your company's .com account? And this was looking at a pattern of 3 million workers. And of those, more than 94% of workplace use of Google AI, Gemini, and Bard are, again, from non-corporate accounts. And so you've got to have policies and procedures in place. That's just the paper. You can put web filters and other things in place, client-based DLP solutions that can read the tags of these documents and not allow them to be uploaded to the non-corporate or non-authenticated version of the AI platforms. But again, it's just a balance, and it's trying to stay ahead. And where are the highest risks in your company to losing corporate data, or to not following corporate regulations or government regulations? This is one we've talked about from time to time, but that cybersecurity also certainly has an impact on credit ratings. And this one's specifically talking about Moody and the costs from cyber attacks, including business interruption, ransomware payments, and legal settlements, do pose an increasing threat to company creditworthiness due to loss of customers or theft of intellectual property or a break in revenue flows. And again, Moody talked about this week. A company raided by cybercriminals may face near-term strains in liquidity and higher debt costs, yet the harm to credit from a cyberstrike may unfold over years as litigation and regulatory fines mount, while noting that so far it has altered the ratings of just a small number of companies, but the frequency, sophistication, and cost have been growing each year. And eventually, if the current trends continue, without proper mitigation, the financial impact could well become material enough to stress leverage ratios and credit quality. Finally, throwing money at a problem rarely fixes it, at least in my opinion. And this goes all across, from just personal budgeting to politics and other things. But the FCC did approve a $200 million grant for K through 12. It's kind of a cybersecurity pilot. And it's a 3-year pilot that's supposed to help schools begin to cover the cost of securing their networks from cyber attacks. I think outside of healthcare, probably K through 12 schools are the most targeted from a ransomware perspective. And typically it's because they know, the bad guys know, if they're targeting them rather than just a spray and pray kind of thing, that they don't, typically the K through 12 schools don't have money for security. But when I say don't have money, in my opinion, that's because they're doing a lot of third parties. They're getting a lot of contractors to come in and do certain little spot projects where nothing's kind of like, it's not a contiguous kind of framework project. And so just throwing $200 million at tools, I think, would be the absolute worst thing these schools could do. Because most of the schools that I've dealt with, K through 12, and even, public universities, they get most of their security products and their technology products for almost free. These companies have an educational discount. They want the students and the employees there to know of their products, so that when they change jobs and go to the enterprise space, they will take those names with them, and then they will purchase them there because they'll know, they'll be familiar with them. And so I hope that the bulk of this $200 million goes to the salaries of full-time individuals, CISOs, directors of security, directors of IT at these schools, to maybe give them a little higher salary And hopefully those folks that go into those roles know that they need to back to the basics, follow the NIST cybersecurity framework, just get a few basic tools that cover, email security, your web gateway security, your data loss prevention, great vulnerability scanners, and some cloud, security posture management tools. And with that, you're pretty well set. You don't need to go buy all these blinky lights, all these fancy new tools. Get your basics in line, do identity access management, do patching, and have a good understanding of your vulnerabilities, your risk register, and your prioritized approach to remediating both, control deficiencies and technical deficiencies. And you don't have to have a lot of money to do that. And so hopefully this money gets put to good use in that regard. With that, I always ask you to like, subscribe. Please ask questions down below, and we hope you have a great week. Thanks.